All right, welcome back in Thursday episode of GC Live. As we do every week, our South Carolina versus Oklahoma preview edition of the show here today. You see it in the background live from BP Skinner Clothiers here in the Vista, 1003A, right on Gervais Street. Can't miss it. Come on down, get your game day fit. New shipment of Gamecock polos, hats, and hoodies. We'll tell you a little bit more about that later on in the show as well. As always, this show brought to you by our guy, presented by Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans, ClintHammond.com, 803-422-6797, NMLS number 71597. Like we always tell you, been telling you for 3-4 years now, if you're in the market for a home, hit up Clint at 803-422-6797.
And we'll tell you about our friends over at Palmetto Golf and Belts, PalmettoGolfing.com. If you are a golfer, custom golf gloves, towels, and tees in a variety of designs and colors. Got the cross design, the South Carolina garnet, Palmetto moon and tree, and the South Carolina blue. All available on PalmettoGolfing.com. That's Palmetto Golf and Belts. Our guy, Brandon Cohen, longtime Gamecock Central subscriber, big South Carolina fan. He's got specials going on all the time. Go check him out, Palmetto Golf and Belts at PalmettoGolfing.com.
All right, let's dive into it, man. We've already talked about it some this week, but this is our final preview episode of the show. We will hear from George Stoya a little bit later on, Soonerscoop.com. Going to give us kind of the insight from that side of this thing. You look at it, man, two offenses that actually are kind of similar, at least in terms of production this year. Oklahoma, of course, goes out, brings in John Mateer, big-time quarterback. There's a lot of almost Heisman buzz, I would say, for this guy early on. Comes back maybe a little bit early last week against Texas, was not himself. All the reports out of Oklahoma this week tell you, he's ready. He's ready to be back to who he was. He's healthy. He's actually practiced. I think that was a big aspect of last week, Chris. Really didn't get a lot of practice time, which obviously can affect you going into a game. Oklahoma will be hoping they get him back close to 100% and back to who he is. But, man, even with Mateer, and certainly you go back to last year before they had him, this is an Oklahoma offense that has kind of struggled to get off the ground, at least in terms of game flow. You look at this thing going, on paper anyway, maybe a game that's going to be played in a box a little bit. Maybe a game that's going to be about the defenses and going to be about which offense can push through and maybe get this thing up into the mid-20s, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the over-under for this game, which I do not have in front of me, Wes, but it's in the 40s, right? So Vegas is certainly expecting a close game. The line, take 5.5 as of right now in favor of Oklahoma, and the over-under also pretty low. So, you never know in college football these days. We were talking about that earlier on the radio. When you think you're not going to get a shootout, maybe you randomly get one. But I think both of these offenses have had their share of struggles. And, for Oklahoma, you look back last year, really good defense under Brent Venables, but they were not only average on offense, they were below average. They were frankly inept at times, which we all saw in the South Carolina-Oklahoma game in Norman last year. The Gamecocks were able to dominate the Sooners defensively. Did just enough on offense, didn't frankly have to do that much because they held them to 9 points and just ran over them in the first, 5 minutes of the game. You look up as 21-0. This year, the hope for Oklahoma was not only they could be just average offensively, they could actually be really good. So they bring in John Mateer. They bring in his kind of a 2-for-1, the offensive coordinator at Washington State, Ben Arbuckle. But it hasn't clicked yet, Wes. Now, they've played a couple in conference capable defenses. Auburn has not been a very good team overall, but defensively, they've been pretty good. And Texas, as we know, has a very talented team. But then you look back and go, okay, Florida just put up a good many points against Texas, went up and down the field. Then next week, Oklahoma struggles. How much of that was related to Mateer and his health? How much of it is they just haven't been good enough offensively? They also haven't had a ton of tests this year. They went to Temple. They played Kent State. They played Illinois State. So this will be a test for them. And as Shane Beamer pointed out, it'll be the first real big-time SEC road test, too, for John Mateer coming into Williams-Brice Stadium.
Yeah, and Beamer kind of, I think, challenged the fans a little bit. Get out there early. We know the fair is in town. The traffic, from what I hear, has been awful every game this year anyway.
True.
Going to be even worse, I think, with the fair. So a big deal would be, can you get into your seat early, get ready for this one, first real day game of the year for South Carolina at Williams-Brice Stadium. And, man, I think when you start to look at where Oklahoma is right now, they were rolling. Like, they were feeling good about themselves going into that Texas game. And like you said, had a couple of, you look at the Auburn game, they win that game by a touchdown.
Yep.
Michigan game, they ended up winning by 2 scores. How good is Michigan this year? They certainly aren't the national title team of Michigan from a couple of seasons ago. So I think there are questions about just how good this Oklahoma team is, but the vibes around that Oklahoma program have shifted very quickly. Like, we know how disappointing last year was for them. We know that they brought in a bunch of guys, including Mateer via the portal. High expectations going into this year. They start out 5-0. For a 5-1 team, it is kind of, it's kind of crazy to me just how much negativity there is around that program right now. And I think part of it is they are looking ahead at the schedule, what they have next. They're looking at the opponents that are left, and you're going, hey, if you, for the most part, kind of split the tight games there, maybe you're in the college football playoff, but you're also looking at it going, could easily actually just lose most of these games.
Yes.
And they're all going to be kind of in the balance, you would say, where the Vegas lines are probably going to be tight for most of these games that Oklahoma has left. There's a national article right now on 3 from Ari Wasserman saying, this is the key stretch coming up of the Brent Venables era. In this kind of weird place we're in with college football right now, we are seeing administrations, we're seeing fans, I think, turn on coaching staffs quicker than ever. So I feel like the story of the Oklahoma season is yet to be written, because it could really go – it could be a complete avalanche one way or the other. They're talking must win for Oklahoma going into this game. So there's kind of some outward pressure on both of these teams, on both of these programs right now going into this football game.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you've got 2 teams that look very different from a record standpoint or even an outlook standpoint, with South Carolina being a 500 team at 3-3 and Oklahoma at 5-1. But I thought you brought up a good point on the radio show this morning. It's almost like they're looking for a reason to pull back from this thing. And, sitting at 5-1, you'd think, okay, you feel pretty good. But one of those losses was to Texas. Didn't look very good in that game. And then the stretch that lies ahead. Can you go on the road to South Carolina and win that game? And then after that, going up and down, Wes, you got Ole Miss at Tennessee, a bye week. Then you go at Bama, and then you host Missouri and LSU. And as of right now, right now in the rankings, South Carolina is the only one of those teams that's not ranked, and the only one of those teams that's not ranked in the top 16. Multiple top 10 teams, including, some teams that are undefeated in conference, that you're going to play, and a Missouri team that gave Bama everything they could handle last Saturday. So you look at it and you say, if you're an Oklahoma fan, yeah, we're 5-1, but A, we lost a rivalry game, and B, if we don't start turning this thing around and playing better, you can kind of see a lot of losses on the schedule. So I agree, definitely a lot of pressure for them too, and of course pressure for South Carolina to go get back in the win column at home.
Speaking of pressure, a Oklahoma defense that puts a lot of pressure on their opponents. That has been a staple of Brent Venables' defenses for as long as we've been following them. Of course, he was at Clemson forever. We saw that up close and personal in terms of what he can do, creating that havoc up front. They lead the SEC in tackles for losses created. They're way up there in sacks as well. So this is kind of what you would call a prototypical Brent Venables defense. So once again, kind of on the other side of that offense that has struggled to get things going. Mateer has been good for them when healthy, but the defense has not been the issue. And I think it creates an interesting matchup this weekend. Can a move to Sean Elliott with just, really you practice 2 or 3 days. There's a lot of kind of walkthrough in there at the end of the week. There's only so much you can do in 1 week span to try and kind of quote unquote fix the offensive line. Will we see major personnel changes there? From what I understand and from what I expect, probably not. The big thing with personnel is just who's going to be healthy.
Yeah.
Casey Henry, doubtful. Nolan Hay, doubtful going in this game as well. Shed Surratt, doubtful. So those are 3 potential starters in this game that as of right now, we're live right now. We're recording this on Thursday afternoon. We'll get an update from Beamer this evening. those guys are doubtful. So I don't really, expect major personnel changes. The big thing for this line has been, can you cut down on those self-inflicted issues? I feel like we've talked about that every week. You do have a home game this week, which helps. You have a little bit of a new voice there. We'll see if that helps. I don't know how much you can learn a bunch of new techniques in 1 week. I don't think the scheme will change a ton, but I think the question for me with this offensive line is just, can they get just that little bit better, that little bit more consistent play from them? Because we have seen at times it look okay. We saw them run the football against LSU, and it's the running backs as well. It's not Sellers having to go for 150 yards or something. The running backs are able to get loose. They had a great day on the ground against a good LSU defense. Can you recreate some of that on Saturday? I think, one, you're still going to have to run Sellers, even though he didn't have a huge game on the ground last week. I think that opens up the rest of the running game. Can you continue to get the wide receivers involved just a little bit? We saw them do a couple of things with Brian Rowe and Jared Brown in the running game. And then can you just deal with the havoc that Oklahoma creates? Can you deal with all the uncertainty that they're going to create with their blitz packages, their stunts, their twists, and everything that Venables is known for doing up front?
Well, and the issue is, if you're South Carolina, you're going into this week knowing that regardless of opponent, you have a list of items that you have to fix and get better in, which is, of course, you start with just penalties and self-inflicted stuff, but also not giving up as many pressures and things like that. Sacks, pressures, right? Even at times where Lenore Sellers has not been sacked, he's been under pressure way too much. That's affected him. It's affected the offense. And it's caused, I think, Wes, I agree with you. You brought up the point that he's been seeing ghosts sometimes right there, where even when there's not pressure, he's been feeling it. So you already have that list of things that you have to accomplish to win this game. Now you got to go do it against an Oklahoma team that's actually where they're elite. They're elite at creating havoc. They're elite at sacking the quarterback, creating tackles for loss. I was trying to look up where South Carolina is offensively and allowed tackles for loss. NCAA website's having some problems the past couple of days, but I do know Oklahoma's number one in creating them. And I know without even looking at the stats, South Carolina's given up way too many, right? So I think that has to be your hope. No, we're not going to see an entire scheme overhaul, although Shane Beamer mentioned, especially in the run game, Wes, hey, there's some things that Sean Elliott likes in the run game. Maybe you'll see some, and I think we'll probably see a couple newer things from a run scheme standpoint, not an overhaul, but building on last week and adding in a couple things. But the starting point, Wes, if you could kind of wave your magic wand with this offense, yeah, we can talk about all of it. We can talk about play calling, and we can talk about, running the ball. We can talk about the passing game. We talk about all those different things, even the play up front. The starting point, though, if you could fix one thing, is just stop beating yourselves. And that has really been a theme, particularly in the two road losses that South Carolina's had. You can kind of draw a line and say, if you just eliminate those things, hey, you might have a chance to win those games. Does it help that South Carolina's at home some? I think so, right? We saw the Missouri game, all the self-inflicted stuff. Kentucky at home, much better. Go back on the road, you didn't take the show on the road. So back home, will that help some? Maybe, but now you've got your biggest challenge yet with the defense that you're facing.
You were asking for tackles for loss allowed for offense? Yeah, South Carolina 14th in the SEC right now with 37 total tackles for loss this year. That's 6.17 per game. Right below them, your opponent this week, Oklahoma. They've allowed 38 tackles for loss this year. And so two teams that will defensively be hoping their guys up front can go take over this football game and again, keep this game played in a box. I think what stands out to me, though, and our eyes have seen this as well, the stats back it up, how many of those Sellers sacks, because he is so good at getting away from pressure and creating something out of nothing, when he does go down, though, how many of those sacks have been deeper in the backfield than your typical sacks?
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And sometimes, here's the thing. Yes, we like to blame the offensive line. There's plenty of blame to go around. When you drop deeper and deeper and deeper, that actually creates an excellent angle for those pass rushers who are trying to go around your offensive tackles, right? So South Carolina 14th in the SEC in tackles for loss allowed this season, which obviously is not a great number. But, Chris, if we sort this by yardage, so the yardage that they have lost this year on those tackles for loss, by far the worst number in the conference, 230 yards lost. So just think about your offense losing 230 yards of field position on TFLs on offense, then add in what you've lost on false starts, and you can kind of see how difficult it's going to be to get going on offense when those things are happening if you are not already a super explosive, incredible
That's
offense.
Right.
Anyway, if you're good enough, like if you're just going up and down the field on teams, I've seen offenses. I've watched South Carolina. I've watched other teams I pull for play defense against an offense like that. You feel like, oh, we got them behind the sticks. And they just erase it like it's nothing. If you're great on offense, you can erase these things. If you're not great, you can't do it. So a lot, I think, to sort through for South Carolina, but a lot where you're going, if you can just eliminate some of these things, the good will start to actually show as opposed to being overshadowed. Chris, I think this would be a great time to go out to our guy, George Stoya. This is pre-recorded from yesterday, but good insight from him. He's on Soonerscoop.com. They do a fantastic job of covering Oklahoma and giving us the insight there. Talked about John Mateer, talked about their fan base, talked about the vibe around the program right now. So if I can get this queued up real quick, we're going to go out to our guy, George Stoya, right now. All right, guys, welcome back in. Like I said, joined now by our special guest on today's podcast from Soonerscoop.com. It is friend of the show, George Stoya III. George, appreciate you hopping on, man. Hope you're doing well today. How's everything going out in Oklahoma?
Everything's pretty good. I think that the fan base is certainly not happy anytime you lose to your arch rival Texas, especially the fashion that they did. People are not happy. So I think everybody's looking forward to seeing if this Oklahoma team can bounce back this week in Columbia.
Yeah, and let's keep it right there first, George. Kind of a vibe check. I always like to get a feel for where the fan bases are, and I know you just hit on it a little bit, but how have the kind of readers and posters on you guys' message board sort of been, I guess, in terms of like, I feel like for the most part, if you zoom out, this season has been a step forward, at least from what we saw last year. It was interesting to me. Oklahoma was a team, even with last year's season, they were already kind of being picked by a lot of national folks like, hey, this is a team that's going to take a big step forward this year. This is a team that's added a difference maker at quarterback. The season starts the way you want. Then you kind of just hit this massive hurdle last week, maybe a little unexpected, the loss to Texas. How are they taking that loss in terms of like the greater expectations for this season when it started?
I think it depends on who you ask, because I think there's definitely a group of fans out there, a lot of them over on Soonerscoop.com, that want everybody fired for losing to Texas, especially the way they lost that game and on offense, not being able to move the ball. The end of first half game management from Brent Venables was terrible, and something that we've seen at times throughout his tenure. But you're right. In a lot of ways, Oklahoma has shown some improvement. Beating Michigan at home again. I don't know how good Michigan is, but still, that's a nice win, and they kind of won that game handily. Beating Auburn at home, and that game was tight, but the way that you did it, where you went down and you scored a late touchdown, and then you got the stop at the end of the game, those are things that, honestly, we didn't see a year ago, and we haven't seen at times during the Brent Venables era. So I think everybody was feeling really good heading into the Cotton Bowl, and I can tell you, OU and its fans all felt very confident that they could beat Texas, especially with the way that Texas had been playing. It felt like a big missed opportunity. And, you look at some of the deficiencies on the offensive side of the ball and not being able to run, and obviously the John Mateer situation. And that's the part where you take a step back and you say, okay, they're sitting at 5-1. Yes, the schedule is extremely difficult, but if they can just get to 9-3, then maybe they can be in that playoff conversation and get in. And I don't know if they can get there. South Carolina's probably the easiest team they still have left in their schedule. Maybe LSU is in that same argument, because I'm not much of a believer in LSU. Missouri, they get Missouri at home, Ole Miss at home, but it's a brutal schedule, man. They got to go to Tennessee, to Alabama, obviously South Carolina this week. And so I think everybody kind of says, man, they just played so bad. and the schedule's daunting. But when you do take a step back, I do think there's been a lot of improvement. Now it's, can they overcome what was honestly a really bad loss this past week, and where they kind of got exposed.
Yeah, and George, I think we're seeing, especially in the SEC, maybe college football from a greater standpoint, becoming a little bit more like the NFL, where you're not going undefeated. Like really, I cover a South Carolina team that was 9-3 last year, just barely missed the playoff. You look at a lot of the conversation around college athletics, around the SEC this offseason, it feels to me like a 9-3 SEC team is going to get in. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of context based on everybody else, but I would say a good shot, at least, that a 9-3, if not this year, at some point is going to get in. So I think certainly that's something for Oklahoma to aim for. Let's talk about Mateer. When I've seen like spurts of him, I've seen clips of him. Obviously, he hits the ground running, just an incredible start to the season. For somebody who gets to watch him on a week-to-week basis, what stands out about John Mateer? And then, of course, can you give us a health update on where things are going into this game?
He's a playmaker. I think that's one thing that you've seen from him. His best moments, he's scrambling or getting out of the pocket and either running with the ball, which we saw a lot against Michigan. I mean, he was their leading rusher in that game, and a big reason why they won is the way that he ran the football. And then he's also been able to make some big passes down the field. And he really knows this offense in and out. And that's why this past week was really strange. He made some really bad decisions. There was guys open, and he just didn't see them, or he overthrew them, or he was a half second behind. And a lot of that I would attribute to he hadn't practiced in 3 weeks. He tried to rush back, obviously, from the hand injury, and came back 17 days after having surgery. Didn't really practice leading up to the game. I think he maybe only practiced one day, was cleared on Thursday, and obviously did some of the walkthrough stuff. And he'll tell you, and he said it in the media, that, that's not an excuse, and, that he, got enough reps and all of that leading in. He just didn't play well. But I think we all know if you don't practice, and especially going up against a good team like Texas, you're not going to play well. And that's what you saw. And I think that's why this week is so big. He's told us that he's full go. Brent Venables said he's full go. He didn't re-injure it in the Texas game. So it sounds like he's going to be practicing a lot more. Again, is it 100%? Is he getting every single rep in practice? I don't know, but I think it's a lot more than what he had a week ago. And so you're hopeful that he can bounce back and look like that player that he was early in the season. And the biggest thing, Wes, is what we've seen from this Oklahoma offense is John Mateer makes the whole thing go. If he's not on, they really don't have a whole lot, because they can't turn around and hand the ball off and run the football. They've been really bad at running. They have, pass protected extremely well. This offensive line has been one of the better pass protecting units in the country, but they haven't really found anything in the run game. So you're forcing John Mateer to make stuff happen through the air. And we saw that last week. That just was not a recipe for success, especially with a guy who's coming off a broken hand, hasn't practiced. And so they really need to get him going and get back to what he was really good at early in the year, which was making a lot of plays. And again, he needs to be healthy. And it sounds like he's only going to get healthier as the season goes on.
How did you frame up the thought of, okay, everything's so professionalized in college athletics right now. I appreciate a guy that says, you know what, I feel like I can go, so I'm going to go. Like, this is OU Texas. This is a rivalry game. I'm the leader of this program. I'm going to go play. Versus then you kind of see how he actually played. The level of play, clearly, as you said, was not to what we've seen from Mateer the rest of the year. How do you kind of frame up like he was not himself and able to go do what he needed to do to win the game, while also acknowledging, like, this is what I want from my leader. Like, this is what I want from a guy who's going to go out there and lead the program by example.
Yeah, look, John's the ultra competitor, right? I mean, he's a guy that he's not going to miss. And he was telling everybody, it was funny. I mean, around here, he was running into people at Chipotle, and people would ask him, hey, are you playing against Texas? And it's like, he's like, yeah, I'm playing. And so I think we all knew if he could throw the football in any regard, he was going to play. And I think from Oklahoma's perspective, they were like, he gives us the best chance to win. And, we saw what Michael Hawkins did against Kent State. It just wasn't a whole lot for OU. And last year, he was the starting quarterback there for a time period. I mean, he started against South Carolina, and they were up 21-0 in the blink of an eye. And so I think that they just knew in a game like this, if they could get Mateer, to play, that he was their best option. And I think that he also kind of, kind of lights a fire in the team. I think guys were super excited that he was going to get to play, and you saw it early in the game. OU was moving the ball. They were able to complete a lot of passes. Mateer looked really sharp, especially with some of the scripted stuff early in the game. I mean, their first couple drives, they were able to move the ball up and down the field, and that was largely because of John Mateer. And then it just kind of, as the game went on, he really struggled. And so I think that it was one of those things that the team really rallied around him. And it's one of those things we're hearing this week too, Wes, is the team, despite the way John played, they're still very confident in him. The players really appreciate his toughness and wanting to play in that game this past week. And obviously this week as well, moving forward, there was a lot of people that thought when he first injured this, he wasn't going to be back by the South Carolina game. It was going to maybe be the Ole Miss game. So the fact that he's playing, I think that the team really appreciates that, and they're hopeful. And I think they have a lot of confidence that he won't play as poorly as he did on Saturday again this week.
Yeah, and you just have to respect that, I think, just as a fan of the game as well. Let's talk defense a little bit. Gamecock fans very familiar with what Brent Venables can cook up on that side of the ball. We saw it for what felt like 100 years, South Carolina going up against Clemson. And when I think of Venables' defenses, I think of just havoc. I think of the fact that it's going to look like Beamer talked about this a little bit this week in his press conference. It's going to look like they're throwing a million things at you. Now, they may have it sort of structured on their end where it's not as complicated for the players and for the Oklahoma guys, but from your perspective, you're going, we got to be ready for 100 different looks. What have you seen from this defense? I know they're really good defensively last year. Maybe that got overshadowed a little bit, but with Venables taking over it, kind of this year, George, what have been the differences? What have, just been your observations about this defense?
Well, I'll first tell you, the players would tell you it is very complicated. A lot of the guys have talked about that in the sense of learning this playbook is kind of insane. It's the biggest playbook that a lot of these guys have ever had in their careers and may ever have. So he does a lot of different stuff, whether it's stunts up front or disguising coverages on the back end, some stuff that maybe teams have never seen before. So he's really good at that. I think that him taking over the play calling duties has been really good. And they were really good a year ago, but they've taken this thing to another level. And I think a big reason why is not just him play calling, but they've got a lot of third and fourth year guys in this defense at all three levels. You look at the defensive line, and that's kind of where it starts is, they have guys in Grayson Halton and Dominic Williams, both seniors, guys that have been really good on the interior defensive line, as well as R. Mason Thomas. He's a game wrecker on the edge. As we all know, he was a preseason All-SEC type guy, and he's living up to it this year. He's been phenomenal. Taylor Wine's a new guy. He's a third-year guy that's played extremely well. Marvin Jones Jr., who started his career at Georgia and then was at Florida State last year. He's transferred in. He's been really good on the edge too. David Stone and Jaden Jackson also on the interior. Those are the guys that really make this thing go. You mentioned havoc. Oklahoma leads the SEC in creating havoc plays up front. They get after the quarterback. I think they are like top 10 in the country in sacks and also tackles for loss. So they create a lot of negative plays that make offenses get behind the chains. And then in the secondary, that was kind of where the question mark was. I think they've been really good at safety. Peyton Bowen, a third-year player, has been really good this year. Robert Spears-Jennings is in his fourth year playing safety as well. They've got some young guys back there in Reggie Powers and Michael Boganowski in their second year that have played really well. And at corner, Gentry Williams, senior, he's played extremely well. He's been a starter for him in every game. Eli Bowen, he's back. He was a freshman All-American last year, was dinged up early in the year, started against Texas, played extremely well last week in that game. But they also have a freshman, Cortland Guillory, who you'll see number 4 at times at corner. But they've just been solid across the board. The linebackers, I didn't even mention them, Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie, both 4-year guys that play a lot. And they rotate a ton of guys. I mean, you'll see them platoon guys in and out in the middle of series. So I think that's the biggest thing with this defense is they've got a lot of talent. They're very experienced, and they're able to kind of flex that depth at times that kind of wears down offenses. And so they've been a really, really good unit. And it's kind of what Brent Venables envisioned when he took over is this kind of a defense. And what's crazy is they've got a lot of guys coming back next year as well. So they should be pretty good next season too.
Maybe something to keep an eye on in this game. South Carolina, on the other hand, with their defense, been better than expected, but just not quite as deep as what you're telling us about Oklahoma. So depending on game flow, depending on time of possession, maybe something to keep an eye on this one. George, before we let you go, let's talk a little bit more about the offensive side other than Mateer. I know there's still talk there about O-line play, still talk there about the running game other than Mateer. So maybe similarities to South Carolina there where the quarterback's having to do a lot of the work in terms of the rushing attack. South Carolina got out of that a little bit for the first time against LSU. Finally saw the running backs get going. What can you tell us about the run game for OU and just O-line play this year compared to maybe last year, a game South Carolina's front was kind of able to take over a little bit?
It's not good. I'll start there. It's not been great, especially in the run game. They just have not been able to find any success there. And they've had a lot of different, running backs, and the running back rotation has been a big discussion here this week. They brought in Jaden Ott, the Cal transfer that everybody thought was going to be a really dynamic player for them at running back, and he has just not gotten going. He barely plays. I don't think we'll see a ton of him this week. We saw him for one series, I think 3 snaps against Texas, and he just didn't do anything. So I don't know who it'll be. It'll probably be Torrey Blaylock, the true freshman. He's gotten the most snaps there at running back. But other than that, they haven't been able to get anything going. The offensive line, they've actually been really good in pass protection for the most part. I think they've given up maybe 13 sacks, which is actually a big step in the right direction. Last year, I think they led the country in sacks allowed with 50. And I think South Carolina had half of those. So I think that Oklahoma is looking to be a lot better in that spot this week against South Carolina. But in terms of being able to run the ball, Oklahoma just has not gotten the push they needed. And some of that's the offensive line. I think another large part of it is the tight end group might be one of the worst in the Power Four. They just are unable to block. They tried to rebuild that room through the transfer portal, and they just haven't been able to find a lot of success there. Now, in Jaron Kanik, he's the converted linebacker to tight end. You'll see him a lot in the passing game. He can catch some passes and do some things, but when they ask him to block guys, especially on the edge, it's kind of a disaster. So, and that's really every tight end that they have. So that's been a big problem in the run game as well. But in terms of pass protection, Oklahoma has actually been pretty good. I will say one note to watch. They did lose their starting right tackle, Derek Simmons, in the game against Texas. We'll see. I think he's going to be questionable on the availability report this week. I don't know if he's going to be able to give it a go. He didn't come back in. So look for, Stanford transfer Luke Baklenko to maybe start there at right tackle for Oklahoma, which would obviously kind of be a big loss.
George, final thing, man, any kind of keys to victory on either side, like just in terms of this specific matchup? What are you going to be looking for? What are you going to be watching for here Saturday afternoon in Columbia?
It's cliche, but it's turnovers. For Oklahoma, I think that was kind of what really did them in against Texas. The 3 interceptions were just crucial, especially the one before the half. Those things can't happen. And you look at the turnover margin, Oklahoma's just not been very good in that category. They haven't been able to, as good as the defense has been, they haven't been able to force a whole lot of turnovers. I think only 2 on the season, and both of them came against Kent State. So they've got to find a way to help this offense out, get them the ball back in some short fields, and then obviously not turn the ball over. And that's one thing that South Carolina has been very good at. John Mateer cannot throw the interceptions in this game. They can't fumble the football. I think that's going to be the difference with 2 teams that are kind of struggling right now. I think the team that can create some turnovers and give their offense maybe some short fields, I think that could be the big difference in this one.
George, we appreciate the time, man. And first trip to Columbia, right? Is that right, this weekend?
That's correct. I'm looking forward to it. Maybe we'll check out the State Fair. Any stops for the OU fans that need that are making this trip?
Oh, good question, man. I told you guys this on y'all's podcast. If you're going out there tailgating, like seriously, get out there early because the fair going on. It's way too many people crammed it. And they have a ton of tailgating areas. Like it is a pretty spread out. South Carolina does not have an on-campus stadium, which is a little bit of a positive on game day because there are a ton of options to tailgate, right? However, with the fair being there, if whatever you were guessing, like seriously, get out there 2 hours earlier. Like go early. I would say the night before. Everybody loves Halls. If you want a steak, that's kind of the big one in Columbia. That's like the kind of upper tier, most fine dining place you can go to in Columbia, I would say. And then if you're a college student making the drive or making their ride out here, 5 Points is still kind of the place to go, Bar District. But if you're actually over 21, I would say go to the Vista. That's South Carolina's kind of just restaurant and bar area. Lots of just good spots to hang out down there and, have a beverage, have dinner, all those different things. But, yeah, I would say, man, if you want to get – so this is something people don't really talk about a ton, but the Gamecock walk before the game it's actually – I know a lot of teams have that, but South Carolina does theirs really well. I think it's about 2 hours till kickoff maybe that they do
Nice.
that. But, yeah, the tailgating scene is awesome. The cockabooses right outside the stadium are pretty cool to walk by. It's actual, literal, legitimate, like, cabooses from real trains that have been turned into, like, tailgating spaces. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, lots of cool traditions. That'll be on if you go to, like, kind of the south side of the stadium, that's where the cockabooses are. So, yeah, man, it'll if you're making the trip, you'll have fun. It's everybody will be partying. It's a typical kind of SEC atmosphere. So
we're looking forward to it. I know that because going to the games this year and obviously last year, the tailgating scene versus the some of the games in the Big 12 is just totally different. So I think a lot of OU fans are looking forward to it.
And I got to say this, man, for you guys fans, like, I was not familiar with your game, but from everything I've seen with Mateer and the whole stuff with the doctor taking on a personality of his own, Missouri has never fit into the SEC, and they've been here for forever now. Oklahoma, I feel like I can just say you're welcomed in, like you fit right in. Like, y'all
There's a lot of crazy. Yeah.
Just crazy enough. So
yeah,
y'all fit right in, man. But dude, have a safe trip, have a fun trip, and as always, I appreciate the time, George.
Awesome. Thanks, Wes.
That, of course, George Storia from Soonerscoop.com hopping on with us yesterday to talk about this South Carolina-Oklahoma matchup. Appreciate him taking the time and going in-depth with us there about the game. Chris, let's talk about a couple of our other sponsors here of the show. First of all, I would say our newest sponsor. That's our friends at Brunt Workwear. Head on over to bruntworkwear.com/GC. Code GC is going to get you $10 off your first order from our friends at Brunt. If you're looking for some new work boots, Chris, I know you've been trying these out. Chris has been wearing them to the studio. Chris has been wearing them for his walks in the neighborhood.
That's right.
He's been wearing them around the house. Beautiful part about them is it is your, I would say, prototypical work boot from the outside, but then no real break-in period, incredibly comfortable on the inside. What have you thought of the Brunt workwear boots so far, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, you look at them and you're like, these are work boots, they're heavy duty, which they are, but you put them on, super comfortable, super durable. I'm going to be honest, Wes, unlike any other boot that I've tried. So they're fantastic.
Brunt was tired, Chris, of like the workwear brands that cut corners. You obviously work too hard if you're on the job site to not have a comfortable shoe, a comfortable boot. And so they're insanely comfortable, but also built for the job site. Again, for a limited time, listeners are going to get $10 off Brunt when you use code GC at checkout. Just head to bruntworkwear.com and use that code GC. You're good to go after your order. Would love to have you guys tell us a little bit more about your experience with our friends at Brunt.
We're also going to tell you about our friends over at Ferry Chevrolet. Since 1926, Palmetto State owned, operated business has been serving families all around the state of South Carolina, now conveniently located in Orangeburg, so right in between Columbia and Charleston off I-26. Well worth a trip over there. So if you're a South Carolina fan, a listener out there who's been thinking about a new or used vehicle, make sure you give them an opportunity over at Ferry Chevrolet to earn your business. That's ferrychevrolet.com, F-A-I-R-E-Y, ferrychevrolet.com, or give them a call at 803-937-4531. Joseph Ferry is a fourth-generation dealer over at Ferry Chevrolet. Honesty, integrity, and a handshake, that is how they handle things. Make sure you check them out, ferrychevrolet.com.
Shout out to all of our great sponsors here on the show. You're going to see a banner pop up. That is for that information I told you about Brunt in terms of how you can get that $10 off. Chris, let's dive into some final thoughts on the game. One thing that George talked about with Oklahoma, as much havoc as they have created on offense, which they have created a lot of it, they have not been a high created turnover, a high takeaway team on defense. Frankly, that's a little bit shocking to me. And, I've always thought these Venable defenses, yes, they are going to get you behind the sticks. And we've seen South Carolina get behind the sticks quite a bit this year. That's a terrible matchup on paper. Also, we have seen over the years, they will bust the coverage here or there because they try to do so much on defense, right? And, I even brought up the point that Beamer made in his press conference this week when he said, maybe on their end, it isn't complicated on like the Oklahoma end in terms of them teaching it. Mm-hmm. But on your end, as an opponent, it looks incredibly complicated because they're going to run so many different looks, so many different schemes. A lot of defenses just say, hey, we're going to just major in a couple of different looks and we're going to do them very, very well. And yeah, we'll mix in some other things, but this is what we do and this is what we do great. Well, for this group, they're going to throw everything at you. Now, George kind of pushed back a little bit and said, like, he kind of smirked when I said that. He was like, it is fairly complicated on the guys as well. That's something they've even admitted and talked about, is how complicated it can be to learn this scheme and to get it down pat the way you need to in order to go operate in an SEC football game. So to me, one of those keys you look at with this game is obviously, man, you're going, hey, we're going to give up some tackles for loss if you're South Carolina. Mm-hmm. On the other end, can you go out and find those explosive plays that typically he has been able to, or that South Carolina over the years, even when they struggled against Venable's defenses, at times you were able to get them in some situations. I'm thinking of that one trip to Death Valley with Debo and Jake Bentley and those guys. They did some different things with varying tempos to put themselves in that position. So can you find a way to manufacture something in this game? And then, of course, don't turn the ball over on offense. We know that's always a key, but Oklahoma has not created those takeaways. South Carolina really has not turned the ball over a ton on offense this year. South Carolina defensively has created a lot of turnovers. Oklahoma, worst in the SEC in turnover margin at this point. Yep. You need for that to continue to be a factor in this game.
Yeah, I mean, as we know, Wes, because it happened last week, winning the turnover margin does not guarantee victory, but in a game like this, I think it does create a great path to you. It's going to be very difficult, South Carolina playing this Oklahoma defense, to lose the turnover battle, to lose the turnover margin, and still be able to win this game. I think it makes it tough. But if you're each of these teams, they're looking at this thing going, we got to lean into our strengths. So for Oklahoma, it's wreak havoc defensively. For South Carolina, it's let's also wreak some havoc defensively because, pointed out, Oklahoma's given up some negative plays for sure. They're towards the bottom of the league. And they've also been worse in the turnover department. For all of South Carolina's problems offensively this year, if you can identify a couple areas they have been pretty good in, actually taking care of the football has been one of them, which is all the more actually impressive and kind of incredible because of all the pressure that they've been under and because they found themselves in a lot of situations where you're more apt to turn the football over.
Yes.
A lot of these
third and long
type situations where maybe you force a third, they actually have been a lot better than you expect, I think, in that regard. And they've also been pretty good at times creating explosive plays. We saw it in the Missouri game, passing game. We saw it last week at LSU with whether it's some chunk runs or the big Fuller touchdown. It's hard to envision, Wes, when you're looking at this thing on paper, South Carolina putting together 3, 4, 75, 80-yard drives. Now, Auburn did it a couple of times. They had a couple lengthy drives. Why? Well, they're able to run the quarterback a little. They're able to run the football a little bit. And they got a couple penalties on those drives as well. So can you find some things, whether it's in the passing or running game, to create maybe not a scoring play, maybe not a 60-yard touchdown pass or a 70-yard run, but can you get some chunks? And honestly, man, you look at this thing, it's not the worst thing in the world to get some field position and punt to Oklahoma, I don't think. What you can't do is get behind the chains consistently, lose field position, and then turn the ball over. You've got to stay really good at taking care of the football, and you've got to defensively create some of those turnovers that Oklahoma has given away several times this year.
Well, and do we see this game become a little bit more of what I would call like that old school SEC battle where you are playing some field position, you are you're not going out there thinking, oh, you got to score 35 points to win this game. I mean, I think if you score 24 points in this game, again on paper, you feel pretty good about where you are. Now, when you have opportunities, you have to take advantage of it. We saw South Carolina move the ball quite a bit against LSU. When they got down, it didn't quite count as the red zone. When they got to that high red zone area around the 30-35 is when you saw South Carolina just have a lot of issues on offense. That's when the negative plays started to kick in, whether it was sacks, whether it was a sack via intentional grounding, or whether it was, a false start, these false snaps, all those things. That's when the issues popped in. So can you take advantage of even if you have limited scoring opportunities in this game, you're going to have to take advantage of those. If this game gets played in a box, if this is an old school SEC football game, who says I want to take the points? Like three, getting points is a big deal here. I'll take the 3, or I'll punt for field position.
Mm-hmm.
Who says I'm willing to gamble in this game? And if they gamble, does it pay off, or does it go the other direction?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It could be one of those. If one team gambles and the other doesn't, then whoever takes the points is going to be like slowly stacking points. And the other team, it's going to be about can they convert if they're going for it on 4th down. And so I think this could be very intriguing to see how both these coaches manage this football game, because there's a lot of pressure on both teams. Oklahoma right now, as bad as they have been on offense overall, they've been very good in the red zone. When they get to the red zone, they score points. It's not always touchdowns, but they score points when they get to the red zone. South Carolina defensively has been very, very good at forcing field goals, or in the case of LSU, some turnovers when their opponent gets down in the red zone. So does that continue? Look at South Carolina, 3rd down. The more you have all these fairly even SEC teams, I think they're going to come down to what it comes down to in the NFL. Red zones, 3rd downs. You make your field goals if you attempt long ones, turnovers, all the little distinguishing things that if you played the game kind of on the down-to-down basis, fairly even, what would be the difference makers? South Carolina continues to not be good on 3rd down on offense. For about half of that game against LSU, they were okay. Mm-hmm. If you were tracking the number, as the game went on, that number got worse and worse and worse. So Oklahoma, as you would expect, very good defensively on 3rd down. South Carolina, as much as they've given their team a chance on defense, they have not been good 3rd down defense. They've stayed on the field a little too much. That's why time of possession has not been a good number for South Carolina this year. So I'll be curious to see what gives on some of these things that are sort of a negative facing a negative. What gives on some of these things that are strength versus strength this weekend?
Yeah, and I think, one of is an example of how stats can lie to you a little bit. Maybe the only defensive statistic that Oklahoma has that's not great is red zone defense. And you look at them and you go, oh, they're 97th. Then you dive in, they've only given up 9 red zone trips all year. And I think some of that has to do with their competition and just overwhelming them. But just generally, they played, 6 games, giving up 9 red zone trips. I actually think that's why it's important if you're South Carolina, to get in the red zone, must come away with points. Mm-hmm. And to your point about managing the game, Shane Beamer having that in his mind may look at this game where possessions in the red zone are more limited. Maybe you want to come away with points. Or maybe he thinks of it, says,
you got to score a touchdown.
You got to score a touchdown. You could see either way, right? Like logically, it makes sense either way. So that will be fascinating. But I also think, Wes, you can't necessarily bank on, hey, we're going to make 5 or 6 red zone trips against Oklahoma. That's why I think you need some big explosive plays. I think you need an explosive scoring play or two on offense to get you directly into the end zone if you're going to win this thing.
Well, you need the crowd to be a factor in this game too.
Yeah,
and I think having some plays like you're talking about, having something to cheer about, it's going to, I believe, be a beautiful day at the field. It's a great day for football. You're going to walk in with good vibes. You need to keep, people are going to get frustrated pretty quickly if there aren't some good things happening early on. If you're looking at this game with 24 points as the number, can you go ahead and chop off 7 of those points on script? Mm-hmm. Can you score early in this game? I look at it like how can I build a blueprint to get to that number? and then feel good about it. I think, for one, if you're controlling the game a little bit like that, you force Oklahoma a little bit more into kind of some pass situations where you feel good about your defense going after Mateer. How healthy is Mateer? We shall see. I think one of the things South Carolina's defense on film probably was frustrated with was letting Nussmeier get out on a couple of pass rush situations and run for first downs. We know Mateer can run.
Yep.
How much, if you're Clayton White, does that limit you a little bit on how we've seen Clayton be willing to dial this thing up? Like, he's not a guy that says, well, if it's 3rd and long, we have to drop back and play coverage. He will bring pressure. He will trust his guys on the back end. But do you trust the guys up front to go get the quarterback and stay in those lanes when it's a guy who will patiently wait for the rush to pass him and then take off running? He's been a huge part of their rushing attack, has Mateer. So just kind of that cat and mouse game from a scheme standpoint, do you feel like you have to spy him? That's one less guy that can be playing coverage or rushing the quarterback. Do you just go a little bit more zone heavy where you're saying, well, at least we'll have all eyes on the QB? A lot of South Carolina's zone defenses, they'll play quarters, and it really kind of morphs into a match man, really, even though it's technically zone. It matches out into a man look. So you have the same thing. Those guys get run off down the field. Mateer takes off. So I think there will be some very interesting cat and mouse games on 3rd downs, 3rd and longs. Like we just talked about, do you go for it on 4th downs?
Yep.
How do you play 3rd downs on offense? You know, we saw South Carolina. I'm sure there were some groans on some 3rd and longs. You're going, wait, what are they doing on 3rd and long? Well, they were playing for 4th down situations a couple of times against LSU.
Yep, they were. And, 3rd down, you think about 3rd downs. You don't want to be in the 3rd longs, especially against this team, because then if you are going, all right, we're not playing we're going to try to convert this. We're going to try to dial up a passing play. We're not going for it on 4th down, so you don't have 2 plays. We're not trying to play field position. We're not okay just running the football up the middle here and, playing it safe to the extent where, again, game management, where you say, hey, we need to go try to convert this thing and keep the chains moving. If you're in a 3rd and long, then Oklahoma can do what they do, right, which is really dial up something crazy. They play fast, they're physical, and they bring a lot at you, as we've discussed. Then you're behind the sticks even more. Now you've lost field position. Now you're still punting. Worst case scenario, other than a turnover, of course. So a lot of fascinating things in there. I'm with you on Mateer. The other thing is, and he's obviously a lot different than Garrett Nussmeier for LSU. He's more mobile, but that's scarier, right? Last week, too, Carolina pressured Nussmeier a decent amount, but they were a second away a lot of the time. Can you finish some of those plays and create some of those negative plays that, again, Oklahoma, just like South Carolina, not as bad, but they've given up a lot of negative ones too. Can you have him thinking in his mind, I'm going to take off and run, and then all of a sudden he's got nowhere to run, right? I think that's what you want to do for the Gamecocks.
I feel like being a step away has been the game South Carolina has not won this year. We've seen that from the Vanderbilt game. I thought there were times where you're like, all right, that's a one-on-one pass rush win, but you're a split second, a half step from getting there. So a lot of times I feel like DC say, well, we got to tack on another guy. Let's bring another rusher and try to even out our odds even more. Well, once you do that, that's one less guy in coverage, which I don't think South Carolina is totally concerned about that. But not having that guy to spy or to keep eyes on the QB, I think that does affect what could happen. So, the line last I checked 5.5. Little high for me, in my opinion, because I do think I didn't think LSU was that just fantastic of a team. I don't think Oklahoma to this point is some fantastic team. Could their season take off and they prove that wrong? Absolutely, because there's a lot of season left to play. I think some of their fans have maybe given up on this year way too quickly. You got Mateer. If he's healthy, you've got a chance to have a special season. If South Carolina does what they do at home a lot of times over the last few years, it makes life very difficult on you this Saturday afternoon, then this thing could be in the dumps for Oklahoma pretty quickly. So my single biggest key has to go back, Chris, to turnovers, just because Oklahoma is the worst team in the SEC in turnover margin. South Carolina has been one of the best. I think that has to keep up to win, to even have a shot at winning the game.
Yeah.
If it reverses, then Oklahoma may blow you out, basically. It has to kind of stay the same, I think. And can you get this crowd going early and make this a memorable day for Gamecock fans as opposed to a forgettable day for Gamecock fans?
And I think this is a game where, again, I don't think we thought we'd be saying this going into the season, but I think this is a game where, once again, your defense is going to have to lead you a little bit. You're going to have to, especially with Oklahoma's offense not being what they hoped it would be at home defensively for South Carolina, you need to limit possessions. You need to limit their time of possession. You need to create some positive field position for your offense because you are facing a big challenge in Oklahoma. And frankly, I think you need to get some turnovers where you're putting your offense on the field in a favorable spot so they're not going to have to drive, 75, 80 yards. So defense and special teams once again, and then just being opportunistic offensively. Kind of the same thing as last year in Norman. Not to that extent, not to that extreme. You don't have to have that, but anybody would take 21 points off of 2 defensive scores and 3 turnovers in the first 5 minutes. Certainly can't project that'll happen, but I think a similar path. You got to have your defense really do some service to your offense, I think, in order to be able to win.
All right, I'm gonna be a homer again, man. I keep trying to hit on the surprise South Carolina win.
Okay.
And I'm going to just keep firing at it because in the past, I've been reluctant to pick South Carolina to lose games that they are favored in because y'all freak out if somebody picks against you. And I've been at times I will kind of pick the upset, and if it doesn't happen, I'll be like, well, stop being a homer. Like, it is what it is. As soon as I kind of give up on it, that's the week they win. So I'm going to keep firing at it. And eventually it's going to hit. And I'm just going to steal Garnet Yardbird's number right there from chat. He says it's going to be 24-23, South Carolina. Okay. I've been saying the number 24 all show for some reason. I've been stuck on that. There's no mathematical reason behind that. It just felt like a good number.
Okay.
So I'm going to just steal his number there, and I'm going to say 24-23, South Carolina.
All right. Keep firing away at that thing, man. I respect it. So, for me, look, when you look at this thing, several aspects of this thing on paper, for me, point to Oklahoma because you go, and again, Oklahoma, it's not like they're coming in here as an offensive juggernaut. And they have to come on the road to Williams-Brice. The biggest concern overall in this game for either side, like it's an outsized concern, I feel like, for South Carolina in having their offense with the problems we've seen go against Oklahoma's defense. I think it's fair to say, like, that part of it is the biggest mismatch in this game, more so than Oklahoma's offense versus Carolina's defense, the kicking game, like anything else you can pick out. But again, I go back to a lot of South Carolina's problems, even if you take out inconsistency, even if you take out play calling, even if you take out the struggles up front, just blocking or the tackling on defense. The biggest issue has been self-inflicted stuff. Last time Carolina was at home against Kentucky, that part was better. Doesn't mean it will be this time, but I think Williams-Brice Stadium is more amenable to taking strides there and getting better there than playing in Baton Rouge. Or playing in Columbia, Missouri, right? So I'm actually going to go against the grain of kind of what the home paper says to me and pick the random South Carolina win. Actually, it's not random. It won't be random. Go out there and earn it. 20-16, South Carolina. Make some big plays on defense, win the turnover margin, squeeze out enough offensively to get it done.
Is there a safety involved, or are they kicking a bunch of field goals?
I don't even know. Doesn't matter. You picked the random score last week. Did you even know how you were going to get to that last week?
No, I had no idea.
Me neither. Is it 2016?
I was gonna say, if you ask me how I got to it this week, I just read it
You just
from
stole it.
Garnet Yardbird. So
No, I have no idea. But that's just
Garnet Yardbird, if that ends up being right, free year subscription to Gamecock Central for you. He would deserve it since he or she would deserve it because I just stole your answer. This guy asked why we're doing a podcast in our closet. So I was about to fire back at him, then I was like, you know what? It does kind of look like that.
This was my closet.
Yeah,
it would be the world's best closet.
Yeah, we are live from BP Skinner here in the Vista. Certainly shout out to Brent for hosting us for the second season for our kind of final podcast of the week, each week going into football games. If you're coming into town, if you live in Columbia already or you're coming into town for the game this weekend, come on down to 1003A Gervais Street. Whether you need something for a wedding, a big event, date night, something really, really just nice, high dollar type stuff, we have that. Or if you need your game day fit, we got that for you too. Brent's telling me they got a brand new shipment in, Gamecock polos, hats, and probably my favorite piece of clothing that exists in the world. Hoodie season is upon us. Yes. So we got some new hoodies in here at BP Skinner, and y'all come check it out. And again, shout out to Brent for hosting us down here for the show. How big of a difference can Sean Elliott make on Saturday?
I think if he can just clean up a few things technically, add some wrinkles to the run game that help you, which Beamer has alluded to, hinted at strongly, and just help you clean up some of the procedural stuff. That's what you need, frankly, in 1 week, in a few practices, in a 1 week turnaround. I think he can make a difference, but you're having to do that, make those improvements against a great Oklahoma defense. So it is going to be tough.
Man, one final point. It was so much was made over that discussion of why did Matt Fuller not get the football more after the long run, which I think is absolutely a valid question, valid discussion. So much of that was made that everybody completely forgot how well Russell Faison played in this game. To me, that's the best he looked good in flashes in some other games. Early on against Vandy, I thought he was in line to probably have his best game. But going back and rewatching the game, some of his seeing the whole in terms of what he would do in those situations earlier in the year versus comfort level now, sticking his foot in the ground and going, some missed tackles, some creating something out of nothing. I mean, I thought that was the Russell Faison we thought we were going to see in the Garnet and Black when South Carolina landed him out of the portal. Mm-hmm. So let's not forget he was fantastic in the second half. Can you get him and Fuller going a little bit more? Obviously, Saturday would be huge, but I want to give some love to Sewell because that's the best he's looked.
Yeah, that's what you envisioned, and frankly, that's what you're going to need going forward. Can Carolina find more balance? You've seen big passing game at Missouri, no run game. We've seen big run game against LSU, not much of a passing game to speak of. Can you be more balanced in that? Going forward, of course, but in this game, I think you're going to need that.
No doubt. All right, y'all, we are out. Again, come check us out. GamecockCentral.com. We'll have complete coverage on Friday, and then, of course, leading into the game Saturday, then recaps on Sunday, leading into the week, and then, of course, into the next game. Please come check it out on GamecockCentral.com. If you're not a subscriber, some great deals going on always. You can try us for $1, and we also have some specials going on right now. You have to go check those out on the website too. We'll hope to have some recruiting information for you leading into the weekend too. An official visit, lots of unofficial visits of guys coming in for the game as well. For Chris, I am Wes. Appreciate y'all joining us, and he and I will be back on Monday to react and recap whatever we saw on Saturday, South Carolina versus Oklahoma.